Well, from where I sit, the suburbs are a frightening place. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and my friend Dahlia Schweitzer is here. She has a new book, and we have to talk about it. What other intro could there be, Dahlia? You've been on our Film Threat watch parties. You've been a guest now, talking to my colleague Alan Ng about film. I've quite enjoyed those, and I'm happy to have you back with a new book that you're going to tell us all about.
You and I have lots of recorded podcasts already where we just chat about movies. So
that's true. Sometimes we agree, rarely, but rarely. We do. But I'm happy that you allowed us to run an excerpt from your book. Thank you very much. On filmthreat.com. You can check that out. Just look up Dahlia's name on filmthreat.com. You can also just Google Dahlia and go to her website. But let's talk about this book. It's before we even started recording, we were talking about one of my all-time favorite films, actually, Blue Velvet, directed by David Lynch, which is about, it's not technically a haunted homes film, but it does talk about the darkness under the surface in the suburbs. There's that shot, I'm sure you remember.
I talk about it in the book. It's that opening sequence to Blue Velvet sort of encapsulates the main theme of my book, right? This idea that we have this image of the suburbs in our heads where everything is perfect and idyllic, and you have the white picket fence and the firemen going by waving on the bright red fire truck, and then sort of you just dig a little deeper and everything is just like toxic and infested and primal, and the insects are battling with each other. And we were talking about the amazing soundtrack. They're the sound effects of like the insects kind of going through the soil and fighting each other, and that is absolutely what Haunted Homes is about.
Well, it's that, first of all, it's a very David Lynch thing, is like he takes an inconsequential moment, which is introduce the setting, the suburbs, right? And having the camera come down into the ground, literally goes beneath the surface and underneath the surface. And then the sound design is frightening. And it's a very brief moment. But it's so, God, I love David Lynch. You watch a lot of these movies from the past and you realize how shitty movies are actually today. They're just really just like, movies are content. Movies are product. Movies are hardly today see anything that could qualify as art. I mean, if it is, it's in the realm of indie film, which thankfully I get to cover a lot of. But I always enjoyed when subversive ideas leaked into the mainstream. Tell me about the book and what inspired the book and some of the films that you talk about in the book.
So the book was inspired by a sort of a privately curated film festival where one of the things that I'll do sometimes, because I don't know what to watch and it's always very stressful to figure out, what TV show do I binge next or whatever. And so after the election in 2016, which I found, particularly horrific, I decided to start watching all these horror movies that I had always been too afraid to watch when I was a kid. When I was in high school, I didn't watch any of these movies because I thought that they'd be really scary. So I went back and I watched like all the Halloween movies. I watched all the Friday the 13th movies. And I also started watching the Amityville movies. I naively thought I was going to watch all of them. And then, when I realized that there's like 17, I did not watch all of them. But I noticed this kind of repeated theme, which is that, you've got this suburban environment where you think everything's going to be great and safe and idyllic. And then horror seeps in. And I thought that was really interesting because, and then also just this notion of like the American dream. And so the Amityville movies really stood out to me because, you have these new homeowners in Amityville movie after Amityville movie, who were like really excited because they're finally homeowners and they finally get to have their piece of the American dream. And, you know, the fact that they get the house at a discount because horrific things had happened there before. It's like, you know, houses don't have memories or whatever. And then, of course, all these horrific things start to happen. And then what's really interesting is they can't leave because all their money has gone into the house. And so that made me start thinking about sort of like the economic ramifications of home ownership and the fact that like just the whole mortgage industry, right? And that we're buying these homes that we can't actually afford. And the mortgage industry is all set up to get us into this kind of, you know, as they say, like, you know, what's it called? Like house poor or something, where like all your money is tied up in the home and then you can't afford to leave. And so that's what really inspired the book, was just kind of this idea where you're trapped, you know, because, you know, Eddie Murphy has his stand-up, the Delirious special, where he talks about how, you know, if he moved into a home and there was a ghost that told him to get out, he'd leave, right? So it's like, well, why, you know, and he says, why don't the white people leave the house? And that's, of course, the underlying question, which is, why aren't they leaving? They can't leave because they can't afford to leave. And to me, that is just fascinating. You know, why are we buying homes we can't afford?
Or like if you live in Flint, Michigan, where the water and the pipes are tainted, you know, you can't sell your home, so
Right.
you are trapped. I mean, there is sort of a thing like I am currently not. I have been a homeowner in my past. I am currently not a homeowner, and I will say that there is something oddly sort of frightening about making that commitment. It's that like you're stuck and you can't make a move, right? You're this is where you are and that's it. You're stuck. You gotta
Right.
like everything. At least the thing that was frightening to me was everything cost $600 to fix. Nothing, which is why I became very good. And I would have to say thank you to YouTube for like you know, making it possible. One of the biggest categories on YouTube is how-tos, right? Like anything, it's like, oh, I can fix my dryer. I don't need to call a guy. I can fix it myself. This is the frightening things that go through my head. But
what's funny, actually, just a quick tangent, is I was just watching a YouTube video yesterday because I have a chuckless drill and the drill bit got stuck. And so there I am on YouTube being like, you know, how to remove a drill bit. So yes, it is YouTube.
Well, if I was there, I probably could have done it for you. I have
absolutely. You just had to bang it with the hammer like a caveman.
Yeah, it's but yeah, there must be some underlying, when you look at any genre, sort of subgenre of horror, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like Alien Invasion, which was driven, you know, by the Red Scare, right? And yep. Fear of communism in the 50s, like that in those invasion movies, or
the nuclear bomb.
Nuclear bomb, right? And then almost all the George Romero movies have a different sort of like you know, Dawn of the Dead, more Night of the Living Dead. Original Night of the Living Dead is about racism in the South. Well, Vietnam, but also racism in the South, right? Yeah. It's that is an undercurrent, but it's never on the nose. I always like that when there's a thread. It's getting into something that's wormed into our psyche. That and it's not on the surface. I feel like a lot of films today, they're so on the surface, mainly because the writers are shitty. They're terrible fucking writers.
Or they know that their money is going to come out of China and Russia, and so they can't make the films too nuanced.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's the death of American cinema. There hasn't been an American cinematic identity, I think, since the 70s or 80s. That's when it kind of died, when they discovered the global market. And now we make movies for the world. Mm-hmm. And they'll always be like, that scene is just for this global market, right? And they'll even cut the films differently for different markets. I find it offensive. And I think that it's helped contribute to the divide that we're currently experiencing in the United States. Is there's no central identity. There's no like, this is the thing that we're all behind. See, now I'm getting, maybe it's because I'm wearing this shirt.
Yeah, you're getting very political over there.
Getting political. I didn't mean to get political. We're talking, but what I've always loved about really good horror is it's about something else. It's not about ever what's on the surface.
Yes, that's it. That is like horror is all about kind of taking repressed trauma, repressed anxiety, and putting it up on the screen in a sort of more palatable way. So like another theme that I talk about in the book is, well, actually there are lots of themes, but like, for instance, this idea of, women not being heard and not being respected. And that, over and over again, it's the woman who senses that there are evil spirits in the home. And the husband is like, stop being crazy, take your medication, you're being ridiculous. And then often by the time the husband realizes that she's right, it's too late. And then also you have the theme of what happens if you hate your child. And one of the movies that I talk about in the book, even though it's not a haunted house movie, is We Need to Talk About Kevin. And I have a couple movies in the book that I talk about, even though they don't fit within the exact template, because they demonstrate, an argument that I'm making in a particularly effective way. So one of the things you have is like this idea where you have like the possessed child, right? The evil child. And so what happens if you have a child who is difficult, if you have a child who hates you, if you have a child who wants to kill you and burn down the house? And so, yeah, I think horror films are fantastic for looking at these sort of subtle themes.
Well, We Need to Talk About Kevin is fantastic. It's frightening and it's in a very different way. We were talking about George Romero's zombie movies. One of my favorites, Dawn of the Dead, the original Dawn of the Dead, about consumerism, right? They're in
the shopping mall.
They're trapped in the shopping mall. They have everything they could possibly want. They even have money, and they're not happy. It's a soulless existence to be surrounded by all this stuff at the mall. Really simple concept, but this is what what were some of the other threads that you began to notice as you did your excavation or archaeological dig, so to speak, into the haunted homes subgenre?
Well, what's always interesting to me is when I put together like a proposal for a book, and I have a general idea of what the topics are that I'm going to cover and what the chapters are going to be. And one of the chapters was about race. So it's like, I talk about the family in these movies. I talk about children, gender, that kind of thing. And then I wanted to talk about, racial diversity, racial representation. And then I started watching all these movies, and it's like impossible to find a haunted house movie with a Black middle-class family that moves into the suburbs and experiences everything that you see in all these movies with white families. And there are a couple that parody the Black experience in the haunted house. And then they'll call attention to it, like they'll say, like they'll make jokes about the fact that, oh, that's just a skeleton. That's no big deal. But then I found one movie that's sort of the traditional haunted house movie with the Black family. And it's called A House Is Not a Home. And that's really the only one. And to me, that's just strange. Right. And so then, I sort of had to unpack it and be like, God, there's no secret that racism is alive and well in America. And there's no secret that, racism is alive and well in the suburbs. And we even saw, as I was working on the book, and we just had our most recent presidential election, and one of Trump's talking points was that Biden was going to ruin the suburbs. And of course, when he said that Biden was going to ruin the suburbs, what he meant was that Black people were going to move to the suburbs. So we're still dealing with these same issues. And in the book, I have my first chapter looks at the history of the suburban home, and how the suburbs really came out of the GI Bill after World War II. And they were really designed to be just for white people. So that's another theme that I kind of explore in the book.
What are some of the finds? I mean, you've mentioned movies that I think many people are familiar with. If you're a fan of horror, these films. What are some of the films in your excavation? What was the one with the Black family? What was that called?
It's called A House Is Not a Home.
House is Not a Home. Okay, yeah.
And it was produced by this actor, Gerald Webb, and I interviewed him for the book. He plays like the dad in the movie. And I interviewed him for the book, and he was saying that, you know, when they were working on the movie, they were very aware of the fact that there aren't movies like this with Black families. And he really thought that they'd be sort of like filling a void. And of course, they couldn't get distribution. Right. And I couldn't find the movie anywhere. I think I ended up having to buy the DVD online or something. Because you just, even if you wanted to pay to rent it, it's nowhere online.
Right. Well, it's probably not on digital. Like, there's a lot of movies like that. Unfortunately, that's almost a whole other podcast, where each change in format from VHS to DVD, from standard def DVD to Blu-ray, you know, now to streaming in high def, like, there are libraries, tens of thousands of movies that don't make the transition to the next format, which to me is just heartbreaking to see. Like, whole chunks of film history are going to be left the dust because they're not going to make it to digital, or they'll make it to digital and there'll be some trigger warning at the beginning, or it'll be put in some context because now corporations think we're stupid. And so I push back against that kind of stuff.
But this movie came out in 2015, so it's not even.
No, but that's what I'm saying is like they're not making the format shifts, and then the gatekeepers of those will make it difficult for independent filmmakers like the filmmaker you mentioned to even get to the place where it can get distribution. We could talk to our mutual friend Ethan Minsker about that. He would have a few things to say. But
yeah, I just saw him a few days ago and he talked about the gatekeepers. So yeah, he's got a lot to say about it.
There are constantly these barriers that are being put up to some of these films being seen, which is part of why Film Threat exists. But I'm really curious in your book what you discovered, because in a way you're doing this dig not only into the popular films that we all know about, like Blue Velvet and the Amityville Horror, but films that, like the one you mentioned, that we may not have heard of just because of their, you know, not being available in a traditional way or by the traditional means, so to speak. So what are some of the ones that like you would recommend that we check out that are
that you probably haven't heard of?
I probably haven't heard of, because that's my jam. I love that stuff.
So another movie, so when I was putting together the original proposal for the book, I was actually going to have an entire chapter about queerness in haunted home narratives, and there just wasn't enough content to have a chapter devoted to queerness. And I actually did a podcast with Mike White on the projection booth, and I talked about the lack of queer haunted house narratives. And someone tweeted at me and said, "Hey, have you heard about this movie Spiral?" Which has a gay family. It's two dads who move into a haunted house with their child. And it really fulfills all the cliched tropes, you know, check, 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 except that it's two dads. And I would never have found this movie if it hadn't been for this person who tweeted at me. And to go back to what we were saying before about how to find these movies, because you can't find them in traditional ways. As far as I know, Spiral is only available on Shudder, and I had to join Shudder in order to see this movie. I think it might be a Canadian-American co-production, but it was called Spiral, and I never would have found it otherwise. And another movie that was kind of blew my mind that I hadn't watched before, a much older movie, is called The Entity, that came out in 1982, where a woman is repeatedly raped by a ghost in her home. And it's amazing because it touches on all these sort of contemporary issues where she's raped and no one believes her, and she's showing the bruises, and they're like, "Oh, there's no way that you got raped," and she's going to the doctors, and the doctors think that she's making it up and that it's some response to childhood trauma. And so that movie feels so current, you know, and there's this one line where she says, "I'm tired of being scared." And it really resonated with me, even though it's from 1982. So there are a lot of really great kind of hidden gems that I talk about in the book.
hidden gems is my jam. It's just, you know, and then, well, it also sort of gets back to what I loved, at least in the early days, you know, before streaming and even before DVD, is that it was a struggle to see certain films. You had to know, like, well, there's a John Waters retrospective at the DIA, the Detroit Institute of Arts. I have to go to the John Waters retrospective because how am I going to see his movies any other way? I mean,
Right.
eventually they came out on VHS, but you know, these films that are hard to find. I mean, now we're going through another, you know, there's actually, I speaking of horror, I every year, and it's coming back, there's a twice a year horror convention in Los Angeles called Monster Palooza, and then they do Son of Monster Palooza. It's twice a year, one in Pasadena, one in Burbank, and there's a VHS trading club. There's literally a club. They set aside a room, and it's all guys that have tables filled with VHS. You bring your, you know, milk crate filled with other VHS tapes, and guys are trading. People are trading these VHS, like movies that, like, oh my God, I've never, or like hadn't heard about it in years. It's got the old clamshell, you know?
Yeah, I remember I had a copy of the Karen Carpenter story, Superstar, the Todd Haynes movie. And it was like a VHS copy of a VHS copy of a VHS copy that, like, at one point came from Todd Haynes, but who knows how many times it had been copied. And I know also I teach a course called American TV History, and I always make a point of talking about the TV show Julia, because I think it is, you know, such a gem, and it's kind of been sort of culturally erased. You know, you can't go online on Amazon and like buy the DVD box set. So I have a DVD that's basically from a VHS tape that someone made for me, some perfect stranger that I found online.
Well, thank you to that stranger, and thank you to because some of these people in this VHS trading club have been preserving these, where they'll digitize the movie from VHS and then upload it to YouTube,
right?
You know, in an effort to, like, you know, like if it was available legally, great, get that film legally. But if it's not available legally, I just found Will Vinton. There was a documentary about Will Vinton, of course, who innovated claymation, sort of the precursor to Leica Animation Studios. Will Vinton. There's a on the Film Threat YouTube channel or the Film Threat podcast, you can listen to Clay, the interview I did with the director. His film just played the Tribeca Film Festival. Clay Dreams is the name of it. But there's a feature film that he made that is lost to history. I found it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about Mark Twain. It's like, I think it's just The Adventures of Mark Twain or something. So look up Mark Twain, Will Vinton, you'll find it. But there are and it was only previously available on VHS.
YouTube is great for that. I talk about a bunch of like old TV movies from like the 70s and 80s that luckily I'd be like, oh my God, I'm never going to find it. And then I go on YouTube and there it is.
Well, they're allowed to be on YouTube now. My fear is, as we increasingly spiral into the big tech driven dystopian and Orwellian 1984-ish present, as we spiral more into that being normalized and things become increasingly corporate, where people's views and opinions are policed along with content that's allowed to exist in this sphere, that those things will be lost. So the fact that you're preserving them via this book, I almost like in fear of like just like letting people know there's this whole world on YouTube that you can find. I feel like YouTube kind of wants to like not sort of turn a blind eye. Like they don't want to police it. They like that it's there. You know, it can't necessarily be monetized, right? Because
they'll have the ads, like, you know, before the movie starts playing.
Well, Google will have the ads before. It doesn't mean that money is going to the person's YouTube.
Oh, right. Of course.
This happens to us all the time on our YouTube channel. Is we'll post a trailer, it'll get 1 million views, but the copyright is claimed by some weird foreign company that we have nothing to do with. Now, I don't have a problem. Like, we don't monetize any of the movie trailers. I should even like, I never do this, and I'm going to do this right now. Smash that like button. This is what every YouTuber says, and I feel I feel stupid saying this to you right now, but if you are watching this on YouTube, because if you're listening to this on Spotify, it means nothing. But if you're watching this on YouTube, smash the like button, share this video interview with Dahlia and I having a conversation about horror, because I've been doing these interviews for this other YouTube channel, Film Courage, and they get like 100,000 views, and nobody seems to know I have my own YouTube channel, and like 50 people watch the podcast. So I'm done with that. If you're listening to this, watching this on YouTube, please right now support the Film Threat YouTube channel by just giving a like to this so I can get more than 4 likes. And I don't even, you know what? I don't even care if you don't like it. If you don't like this video, still click the like button and still share it on Facebook. Just do it for me. If you've enjoyed the stuff that I've done over the years, please support. I'm not even asking you for money. Just a quick click and post a comment. It'll give a little activity to this, and then Dahlia and I will be motivated to have more conversations about this, because a couple of our videos blew up. A couple of our conversations blew up. I think it's because we disagreed on things.
Which happens a lot.
It happens a lot, but this is more of a love fest on this. I don't always agree with necessarily your conclusions on things, but that's okay. I love to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the conversation is more what it's about. So, and of course, I'm chewing up all the time by berating our listeners and or viewers. So, but I appreciate that they pay attention to what it is we're talking about. This is, I mean, look, I think that civil discourse in disagreement is awesome. I love it. It's why I love talking about movies, because it's a gateway to talking about every single topic, like ghost rape. Like, we can talk about ghost rape.
Or women not being believed, and women living in fear, and the patriarchy telling women to just shut up and stay home and be quiet.
Well, now that's flipped to like all men are dumb and the enemy.
I mean, so, but they are.
Like in the, well, first of all, I disagree with that, but like, you know, I mean, let's go. Men have all the shitty jobs, like
and all the good jobs.
Well, yeah, but there's nothing, you know, look, I believe in a free enterprise, that anyone can start a business and do a thing, and there are no obstacles. That's why my heart's always on the indie side of things, because there are no barriers to entry other than your own brain worms telling you can't do something. So F that thinking. But there is a trope now, and it's fine. White men are all the enemies in all the movies. That's all. And that's going to be that way probably for the next decade. And then, but it changes, you know, it changes. It goes in cycles. Then you get sick of it, you know?
Well, I would like to say, just to circle back to haunted homes.
Yes.
White men are not the enemies in haunted home narratives, because it's evil spirits and demons, and the white men can be problematic because they don't believe their wives or children or whatever. But they are not the enemy per se. And usually at the end of the movie, you know, there is some kind of role where they're saving, you know, like in the Amityville movie, you know, where he runs back into the house and like saves the dog or something. So you know, I don't think white men do okay in haunted home narratives.
Well, in haunted home narratives, but I will say today there is an effort to either replace and
I know, I'm just trying to stay focused.
Yeah, stay focused on your book. But I'm saying today those tropes have shifted, because one of the things that you used to see in those old movies, there'd be a woman explaining something happened to her, and here, this is the thing that you hear: calm down. Calm down. There's almost like a very condescending, treatment of women in those narratives. That is
in all these narratives. And I always laugh when you get to, because inevitably there's the line of, "Did you take your meds?"
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you seen the Disappointments Room?
I have not seen that.
That's an interesting movie that I talk about. It's funny because you wouldn't necessarily think that it would deserve so many pages in my book, but it gets a lot of pages because it's really interesting just in terms of a gender level, where, you know, the wife is the one who has the like hotshot career, you know, she's the main breadwinner, and the husband still talks down to her. The husband is like talking to her therapist without her being there, and like talking about her, and like, oh, she's being crazy again, and oh, is she taking her medication? I mean, it might even get you riled up.
Well, it's one of those things where, with the benefit of, you know, being in, you know, having distance from it, right? I mean, we're talking about movies that are decades old.
No, but I'm saying this is still the case in movies that came out like last week.
Are you kidding me?
No, in all these haunted home movies, even in the recent ones, it's calm down, you're making things up.
That's a lazy screenwriter is what that is. That's a lazy screenwriter leaning on, you know.
Or that's just gender reality in the 21st century.
Well, I feel like with the benefit of time, right, we're living in the present, you can look on movies decades old and go, well, that was the thing that used to always get me like thinking that's strange is when a woman would be hysterical in a movie. I'm talking about a movie from like the 40s, right?
Cool. Okay.
And then the way to calm her down is to just slap her. Right? Cool. Like,
okay, you're hysterical. Yeah.
Like, you're being hysterical. Like, and I'm like, whoa. Like, even as a kid, I'm watching this. As a kid watching films, I used to watch a show called The Bill Kennedy at the Movies was a thing in Detroit, and he would show like older films. And by older, I mean black and white. So these are movies from the 30s and 40s. And I always found it really strange. People just didn't act that way in the present day. And I think with the benefit of time, you can look back. I think we're going to look back at this era of filmmaking, and we're also going to see that there are shitty, stupid things in these movies. And mostly it's I think it's a lot of like diminishing men or maleness. I think that's, so now the script has been flipped, but we don't notice it as much because we don't have the benefit of time. But it's, you know what? It's fine. It's fine.
We'll agree to disagree.
We'll agree to disagree, but I'm saying that narrative is playing out where no man can be a hero in any sense. It's got to be, we have to uplift, and we're seeing it happen. I'm saying there are many examples in television films of that.
But we're focused on haunted home narratives. Because otherwise we're opening up a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that in haunted home narratives, we're still reinforcing, you know, we're still towing the line, the patriarchy line.
I just wonder how like, if you look at films like The Conjuring or the Conjuring series, I don't think that's what you're talking about is present at all. I think it's, what I'm saying is that the era of filmmaking like that was a thing. And I feel like now there's a different thing in The Conjuring. I don't think that narrative exists that you're speaking about. Although, see, I like that.
Well,
look, I'm making you think.
No. I mean, you always make me think.
Right.
I'm not sure that the Conjuring movies have any kind of diminished masculinity.
It's very balanced. I you know, I think it's fine. You have two, you know, it's a married couple, and they seem to, you know, they share the risk. They're very 50-50.
They're very 50-50,
yeah.
But also, they're not the couple in the haunted home.
Right. That's right.
So
yeah.
They're outsiders who are then brought in to solve the problem. And one of the things that I like about the Conjuring movies is like the husband and the wife have their very specific roles, right? And to support kind of what I'm talking about with the gender difference, you know, she's the empath, right? She's the one who sort of like communes with the spirits and can sense things and like goes into a room and knows what happened there and all that. So this idea of the woman as being more sensitive, more intuitive, that you still see in the Conjuring movies. But I think it's the first one with Lily Taylor, is that right? Where she has like, she keeps waking up with bruises, right? And she can't explain where they're from. And one of the things that I talk about in my book is the threat of domestic violence and this notion that for women, the home is actually the most dangerous place. And so going back to what we were talking about, you know, with horror movies sort of subtly portraying these actual anxieties and fears that we have in real life, in these haunted home narratives, you do often have this very subtle thread of women being abused, right? And so this idea that like Lily Taylor keeps waking up with these bruises and she can't explain them. And so I actually find I talk about the Conjuring series in the book, obviously not the one that just came out, but and not The Nun, because nobody needs to talk about that movie. But I think the Conjuring series is actually really well done.
Well, I agree with you. And if you want to go down another rabbit hole, what I love about the Conjuring series is based on a real couple.
Yeah.
And there are a lot, you can find YouTube videos with, this is like we're doing a commercial for YouTube right now.
We better get sponsored.
They're not even whatever, but there are all sorts of like little mini documentaries about the real couple that the Conjuring is based on. It was fascinating. I went down I have
to go down that rabbit hole. I haven't done that.
Oh my God, you got to do it. And what's great is that their fashion sense, they totally matched in the movie.
Amazing.
You know, that had that sort of 70s like look, very, you know, they're very hip for the time. And they really took the wardrobe from that era and put it in the Conjuring films. So yeah, no, they matched it really well. I was just amazed that like, wow, this is really based on a real thing. I just wonder if you dig deep, like how much of that is like, they got a lot of publicity for that, right?
Well,
like,
of course.
Who knows? It's still entertaining either way.
Well, that's all that matters.
That is all that matters with this stuff. Where do you see, like, because you have the benefit, like with your book, you're looking at like older haunted home films up to now present, more present day ones like The Conjuring. What do you see the biggest shifts? Is it sort of patriarchy being flipped, or like what are the sort of the biggest shifts you see from older horror to newer horror? Because I feel like horror is always about especially when it comes to horror films that are very successful and genres that continue. I think the zombie genre and film and television is very popular, but the themes almost kind of like shift in the evolution of these, right? A new theme can sort of be grafted onto, so to speak, a newer version of that. How have you seen the themes shift from older haunted homes films to newer ones?
So in terms of gender and race, unfortunately, it hasn't really changed that much. So that's what I was sort of alluding to before, that I always kind of have to laugh when, you know, once again, the husband is telling the wife to calm down, you know, like, you can't be serious. There are no ghosts. Ghosts don't exist. I just started watching the new American Horror Stories, which is like a sort of recent spin-off of American Horror Story, and they're back in the murder house. And it's the exact same thing where the Matt Bomer character is like, ghosts don't exist. Houses don't have memories. You know, it's like the famous last words. So in all those ways, it really hasn't evolved, which is kind of fascinating. And I talk about this in my book on private detectives, where I'm always struck by, you know, we think, oh, the world has changed so much. And, you know, 2021, it's a whole new cultural landscape. And like, it's not, you know, it's like we still have the same character types over and over again. So really the only significant change that I noticed in these haunted home narratives is the integration of technology. And it really only started happening, I don't know, maybe in, maybe the last 6 or 7 years. I know it's not the greatest movie, but there's a really interesting movie called The Charnel House, which came out in 2016, which is an excellent example of how technology is being used in sort of haunted home narratives. And there's there's another movie that came out very recently that I think is called like Host Room or something like that, where it all takes place on Zoom. And it's amazingly well done. And then, of course, you have movies like The Ring, you know, and this idea of the ghost or the evil spirits or whatever coming in through the computer, coming in through the television, coming in through the internet, right? You know, and it's like, quick, unplug the internet, right? Because the ghost is coming in through the internet. And so that's, I think, the most significant difference.
I think the movie you might be referring to is just called Host. And
okay, so yeah. Sure.
And it all takes place on screens.
Yes, yes.
I mean, screen, that should be your next book, is a book about screen movies and technology, whether it be, you know, these things, the Black Mirror that we are this addiction, right? And but Host is phenomenal. I believe it's phenomenal. Such a good film, and it's great. It's like a tight, like 70 minutes or something, or no, is it like, yeah, it's about 70 minutes, because that's how long you can be on a Zoom call for free or something. It's like,
no, you can be on Zoom for free for 45.
Is it 45? They kind of play with that time a little bit, but it's like this call is going to end. It's phenomenal. Yeah. But yeah, I really like those screen movies. I think that's your next book, Dahlia. Because that's a whole genre now of movies that take place on a screen, and there are, you know, there are many of them, right? Like Unfriended, among others. So you're going to mention me in your next book.
Sure.
That's, well, what I really like this genre, because it's not like, I mean, this is the challenge with screenwriters today, right? Screenwriters, like, the problem with this is that it solves too many problems. That's the problem with this thing is, oh, well, we can just like call an Uber or do this, or I'm going to whatever. It's just, you know, this thing solves every problem, right? Or whatever, or the camera at my house. Like, so you've got to be really creative, which is why I think the screen movie genre is so fascinating, because it leans into that these aren't the problem solvers. These are the
evil, the conduits.
They're evil. They're evil. Yeah. You know, I mean, like, what is it? Charlie Brooker, like, didn't do another season of Black Mirror because he says, well, there's not, like, everything I've been warning about is just coming true.
Yeah, no, and it's chilling, because I mean, I think we were talking about how we're basically, in a different podcast, we were talking about how we're basically living in an episode of Black Mirror.
I mean, 2020 was an episode of Black Mirror, basically, and we're still not out of it. You know, we still have the mainstream media fear porn, and that doesn't seem to end. And what I think that does is it ignores the real problems, which is the class disparity in the United States. I think that divide is becoming greater and greater. It ignores like real problems that we need to be paying attention to, instead of like building up the coffers of pharmaceutical companies. What am I doing? I did not want to go down this path, because it sounds like I'm not.
You can't help being political.
Well, the problem is it's like, it's so pervasive, and I prefer, talking about movies is sort of a gateway to that. But my politics has always been very middle of the road, kind of boring. And I have very little trust for either side today.
But if your viewers have not seen the movie Pulse with Kristen Bell, that is worth a revisit. Because we were talking about how like Black Mirror was sort of foreshadowing things that were to come. And the fact that this movie comes out in 2006 and is all about the evil forces that come in through the internet, and the fact that, like, you've got to move to a place where there's no internet, there's no Wi-Fi in order to be safe. And that was in 2006. So that's another really kind of great movie that really sort of foreshadows what was to come.
Well, I really think that a lot of this just has to do with social media, and
but in 2006, social media wasn't what it is now.
No, it wasn't until, this is when things, I noticed this, they didn't start really using algorithms to kind of alter your feed on social media until around 2011, 2012. Like that was like, oh, we can actually like influence what people see.
Your reality. We can help your reality based on your algorithm.
It's like the tab that says COVID. You can't delete that tab. It's just always there. Whether you go on Apple News, whether you go on, there's always that tab is there, even though the third leading cause of death, I mean, it's not even in the
all right, let's not get sidetracked.
Let's not get sidetracked, but the third leading cause of death in the United States is medical malpractice. That's a thing. So I don't know. We could go down. Oh, you know what? I like to read. And I read many different things. So,
yeah, and you like your rabbit holes.
I like my rabbit holes, but but I'm also a person who's like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm fully vaxxed, by the way. If anybody wants to try to read into what they think that my opinions are, I'm vaccinated. So
also fully vaxxed.
Exactly. Well, but I would not think that the last person you should listen to would be someone like myself telling you to get that. I think the person that you get information from should be your personal physician. Whoever your GP, your general practitioner, the person that is your doctor, that is the only don't listen to celebrities.
Or Chris Gore.
Or me. Don't listen to me. You need to make a decision for yourself, and you make it with someone who is a qualified person to offer that advice. And I am not that person. So
I will not come to you anymore for my medical questions.
Not do that. That would be crazy. That would be crazy.
I have a weird rash on my toe. Can I show it to you after we finish recording?
Yeah, no, that's gonna be a hard no. I will be not helpful. I'll be not helpful in that. But to me, these things are just common sense, like logic. Like, don't listen to a moron celebrity tell you about politics. Unfortunately, in talking about movies, there are rabbit holes that you'll go down that because it relates to the subject matter of the movie, right? So there you are. An American Horror Story has done a great. I love that series. There was the series, the season that came out after the 2016 election. I thought was fantastic.
Which season was that?
I don't know. It's
okay.
it's the thing. But it was, it was motivated by the sort of the kickoff of that episode was right after the election,
right?
And it's about like a
cult. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that one. Oh my God, it's so good. But American Horror Story has been really good at that. I love that series. It's just fantastic. It's one of those things you just have to binge watch. You have to binge watch. I think they're all on Hulu. They're all somewhere. Everything is somewhere.
Yeah, it's so funny because I can't, and it's all like I can never remember which is where, and then they move around, so it'll like be on Netflix this month and then Hulu next month. So
this is the one thing that Google is good for. You can find that information out.
That is the one thing. One thing that Google is good.
You can also not take advice from me about anything other than movies. I will give you advice on movies because I know, and on almost any other topic, take it with a pound of salt. If I even, and my opinions are all my own. I would never presume to tell someone how to think or what to do in their own lives. This is the great thing. We make our own choices and are accountable for them. So there's not a soapbox here.
I think there might be.
There might be. I think those Film Courage videos probably
got you all riled up.
Got me riled up. They put you in a room, they interview you for 3 hours. They cut it up into these little 10-minute digestible chunks, but it's very intimidating. The couple who do that series, David and Karen from Film Courage, are phenomenal. And I've watched them for years. I watch because they get like screenwriters and producers and filmmakers and directors, and they're incredibly honest. So I really felt intimidated doing those interviews. This is now we've just evolved into you and I chatting, which would happen anyways, right? Well,
it's also devolved into the soapbox.
Devolved into the soapbox. I did not intend that. But Dahlia Schweitzer, thank you for being on the Film Threat podcast.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
You got to come back. Let's do. We need to do a watch party. Is what we need to do.
Sure, that'd be fun.
We need to do a watch.
What would be fun is if we did a watch party for that movie Office Killer. Which I wrote a book on because I know so much about that. I could do a consistent commentary from beginning to end.
You have to be able to see it. How do people see it?
I might have it in a Google Drive.
Yeah, but do we make that public? We'd have to make it public. And
this goes back to what we were talking about with the gatekeepers, which is that when I was working on the book, Miramax had it on Netflix, and then they took it off Netflix, and now it's not available anywhere.
Well, it's probably because the Miramax library is in some sort of legal limbo. That's entirely possible. But let's next time we do a horror film,
Okay.
We got to get you on.
I'll come on and be a panelist.
Well, we have some horror. We have some, yeah. I mean, there's like especially with October coming up, Halloween season. Pretty much do all horror for the month of October, but we should have one where we'll throw you into the mix because you did. What was the one? Was it you did Corona Zombies? Was that one?
I did Corona Zombies.
Oh my god!
Yeah, with Cody.
Well, okay. So look, if you're watching this, listen to this. There's the watch party with Corona Zombies
and Cody Renee Cameron.
Cody Renee Cameron, who her Instagram, I think
is very entertaining.
Is very entertaining Instagram. She is a firecracker.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say about it.
I also did the Man in Camo watch party.
That's right. Yes, because of our mutual friend, Ethan Minsker.
Right. But yeah, no, I'd love to come back. And you've been posting on Instagram about a lot of really good horror movies. So I'd love to come back and do a watch party.
Hey, well, you're just a recurring character. Like if Curb Your Enthusiasm is my life, this is my version of that. I'm the Larry David in this scenario. You're a recurring character in my.
I hope that's a cut above special guest star.
Yeah, it's a cut above special guest star because you're recurring.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay, I'll take it.
Like Richard Lewis, who recurs. I don't know. I started binge watch. Just a total side note before. I don't know if anyone's still watching this. I don't really care. It's you and I catching up.
I love Richard Lewis.
Okay, Richard Lewis, who we follow each other on social media. I was very just tickled to get a response from him. And it was hilarious. His response was hilarious. I think I might even have it on my phone if I look it up. But I started rewatching the Curb Your Enthusiasm series just because it's on HBO Max and whatever. The thing that struck me was how politically incorrect that show was. I mean, politically incorrect at the time. It feels even more so now. And it's unbelievable how much has changed from cell phones to culture to even subjects that are okay to make jokes about. And it was originally launched in standard def. So it looks weird. It's standard def. So you're like, oh, this looks awful. Like it was shot with, 480. Right. Not what we're used to now. Everything is HD. The HD didn't really, I think, come into prominence till like maybe 2010, 2011, when most shows got there. It was expensive at the time. Now it's everything. But it's incredible rewatching Curb Your Enthusiasm. How wow, that was not that long ago, and wow, when we're never going to see it
a lot.
It would change a lot, and now I hope that my opinions are approved to even have them. I don't know if that'll happen. I'm surprised I haven't been canceled. There've been many attempts, but I haven't been canceled yet. So
you're resilient.
Well, we'll see. When that Film Threat documentary comes out at some point in the future, 100% I'm going down.
You might be canceled.
I might be canceled. Well, see, you're the barometer, actually. I think that because, you're not, there's definitely a Venn diagram of things where we agree and then where we do not. So you're going to be, when you see the finished of that movie, I know you might have seen some of it.
Yeah. No, I saw an early cut.
Right. Well, when you see, then you'll kind of see whether you even want to
talk to you again.
Talk to me. Yeah. Okay. We'll see if that's the case. Dahlia, it's always a pleasure. I don't want to leave. I got to do another podcast. This is
all right.
We'll
do another one soon.
We have to do another one soon. Let's come up with a couple topics.
Okay. Let's find movies that we fight about.
Well, that's not going to be hard. That could just be like any movie, and then I'll divert into doing a rant about how fucked up I think today is. But that's just me. Maybe
just another day in your life.
Yeah, and you feel free to post that meme. Old man yells at cloud because I'm that now. I have become the meme.
You need a cane that you can wave around at the cloud.
Yes, I'm good. But I love chatting with you, and I love chatting with my audience, all of the 40 or 50 people that are probably going to see this. I hope it's more. If you actually watch this and listen to the end, post down in the comments. Post in the comments on the YouTube if you're seeing this on the YouTube. And
maybe even suggest a movie that you want Chris and I to fight about.
That's good. Okay, we are going to take a suggestion from this audience that made it to the end. Whatever the suggestions are, we will talk about that movie, Dahlia and I, on the next thing, and we will give you a shout out, whoever that person is. I'm sure it's going to be like Hamster 69 or something. I don't know. That's something. It's going to be a weird name. It's going to be a weird name. Or Chris Gore is an idiot 77. That would be that
Hotmail
username. You know, this is why you and I get along, even though we don't agree on everything. Is I believe that you take your work very seriously. I also take my work very seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously.
No. This
is our saving grace. This is why you and I could get plastered at brunch.
Yes.
We'll go to brunch one day.
One day. Yes.
One of these days when you know it'll happen. Dahlia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here comes the outro branding. Here it is. I'm so proud of this logo and music. Take care.
Bye.